everybody. We're going to talk about healing with oxygen. That oxygen is so important. But before we do, we have reviews. And this is from Glenda. I love your and Dr. Amen's podcasts and the education you provide us. I'm so thankful for all that you do to engage the public in wellness, eating clean, and taking the right supplements. So that's from Glenda.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. So why are we going to talk about healing with oxygen?
Because it's important. You mean because, why are you looking at me like that? So I posted a picture on Facebook and on Instagram of me in the oxygen chamber, and it got way more interest than I would have thought. It was like one of my highest engaging pictures. So it was really interesting.
But another video that got posted got like 25 million views.
Yeah, it's so
and
dumb.
That's why you need oxygen.
It's so stupid.
Which is we're going to talk about.
It's so stupid. So I like to keep my community just involved in what I'm doing. Had no idea that it would go viral. It's so stupid. So
could you share?
Well, since you brought it up now, I have to because it's so stupid. So you all know, because you've been following us, that I love self-defense classes and I take these silly classes. I mean, I take survival classes and all sorts of stuff. And so I took one class on counter custody and kidnapping, and they taught you how to get out of handcuffs and zip ties and all this stuff. And I didn't post the whole video because they didn't want me to. I only posted the part where I was actually at the end of getting out of the zip ties. And so I posted that part of it because they said I could.
Maybe they liked that you were tied up.
Whatever. So I posted getting out of the zip ties and it went viral, which is so dumb. It was the dumbest thing. And you just thought it was hilarious. And so I just thought I was posting, keeping my few thousand women involved in my life, and it went crazy. So it was so stupid. But that is not what we're talking about today. We are talking about hyperbaric oxygen.
Oh, hyperbaric oxygen.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yes. And one of the reasons you're interested, again, going back to your scan, is it was sleepy. And one of the reasons I got interested in hyperbaric oxygen 20 years ago was that Mike Usler from UCLA, he's a nuclear medicine doctor, he would show me these before and after SPECT scans showing significant increases in blood flow in people who underwent hyperbaric oxygen training.
Well, when I was in the hospital working as a nurse, I worked in a trauma unit. We used to use hyperbaric oxygen for people who had wounds that wouldn't heal. So for necrotizing fasciitis, which is a flesh-eating bacteria, for certain infections.
Why did you scare me? You just scared me.
So certain infections. Also, one time I had an elderly lady that she was in her late 80s. She got attacked by a pit bull, and this pit bull degloved her whole arm, and it wouldn't heal. It was really sad. And so we put her on hyperbaric oxygen to help stimulate the healing process. And so I had never heard of it for what you do until I met you. And I was like, oh, you use it for brain health? Oh, that's so interesting. I had seen it for healing, for bacterial infections and healing and stuff like that. So I thought it was so interesting. So now I'm doing it. And I posted this picture of me inside the chamber because I'm trying to stimulate blood flow and wake things up after, anesthesia. And a head injury. And so I got a lot of interest. So I thought we would share with our community why we do it here, what it does, why it's good.
So we do it in all 8 of our clinics because we often see low blood flow on the SPECT scans we do. So SPECT is a study of blood flow and activity in the brain. And I always am thinking in my head, first do no harm, use the least toxic, most effective treatment. And
so why
hyperbaric oxygen is one. And just as you said, it's approved by Medicare for 14 wound healing indications, like diabetic ulcers, but it's not approved for brain indications. And so people don't think that if you have a stroke, well, that's in fact a wound.
Right.
If you have a head injury, that's a wound. If you have lower overall blood flow from general anesthesia, well, that's sort of like a wound. And so there's been sort of fight in the insurance industry. Should you cover it? Should you not? I don't really like political fights, so I stay out of them. I published a study on soldiers who had blast injuries and also emotional trauma. And after 40 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen, after the first session, we saw improvement. But after 40 sessions, we saw persistent improvement. We published it in the Journal of Neurotrauma, and they had improved cognitive scores, improved emotional scores. I was just so excited because clinically we've seen that for a long time, that our patients who have traumatic brain injury, who have strokes, who have some sort of toxic exposure, that hyperbaric oxygen is one of those treatments that can make a significant difference.
Yeah. So, so tell me, so you touched on some of them, some of the things that could cause decreased blood flow to the brain: head injury, infection, right? Toxin.
Any form of heart disease, heart arrhythmia.
So anesthesia, heart disease. So when you go under anesthesia, especially for bypass surgery, they bypass your heart. So that can, and the anesthesia itself can decrease blood flow.
Well, in the end of mental illness, actually, I have a story. It's a bit similar to yours, but it was worse in that my assistant, Karen, and had no idea that she had an aortic aneurysm, but they found it in her family. And so everybody got screened, and Karen had a large aortic aneurysm, and she had a 5-hour heart surgery to replace it, to repair it. And afterwards, she just wasn't the same.
Right.
That she was sadder, she was more disorganized, she wasn't getting things done. And I had her prior scan, and her prior scan, she had a big fat brain, which, you know, helped her be happier and better at work. And then after the general anesthesia, she had a damaged brain. I mean, it was just really clear. You could see the damage globally. And repairing it, and hyperbaric oxygen is just so helpful to do that. Months later, her brain was again much healthier.
Good.
And so
and my
you are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. We say that all the time. But this is one way to do it that can be really helpful.
And the surgery that I went through was not heart surgery, but it was 4.5 hours. What was something like that, close to 4 hours. And I just didn't feel right. So between that and the head injury from the car accident, I think you started to see it. So I'm hoping I have that same, it helps me the same way. That's the hope.
So, and early on, when I was doing the big NFL study, which we started 10 years ago, is that we would use the supplements in Brain and Body Power Max, and 80% of our players showed improvement, but clearly not everybody. And so I then added hyperbaric oxygen as an adjunctive treatment and saw significant improvements. Mm-hmm. And Joe Namath, the famous quarterback from the New York Jets, he was really struggling about 10 years ago. And then it was in Jupiter, Florida, went and got a SPECT scan, and it was not good. And he did 40 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen, and it was better. And so he did 40 more, and then his scan was even better still. And then he did 40 more, so he did a total of 120 sessions, and at, I don't know, he's 77 or something like that, his brain was normal.
Wow.
And so, and obviously he got hit in the head thousands of times, and it's just so exciting to think you are not stuck with the brain you have.
Yeah.
Now, when we come back, we'll talk more about some of the indications for hyperbaric oxygen.
And I want to talk about
or hard chamber.
And I want to talk about why it works. What is it doing? Besides increasing blood flow, let's talk about like what it's actually doing.
Yes, ma'am. So if you learned anything, maybe oxygen's really important to your brain. Your brain's 2% of your body's weight, but uses 20% of the oxygen in your body. If you learn...
Or maybe you've had a surgery and you didn't realize, maybe you haven't felt right and people have said, oh, no, you're fine, but you don't feel fine, and now maybe there's a reason.
So whatever you've learned, post it on any of your social media sites, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast. Leave a question for us, leave a review. We'll get to as many as we can of the questions, but whenever you leave a question or a review, we'll enter you into a raffle for one of Tana's Brain Warriors Way cookbooks. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are talking about hyperbaric oxygen. Before we talk about why hyperbaric oxygen works, I want to read this review. I've been a longtime fan of Dr. Amen since Change Your Brain, Change Your Life came out. Somehow I didn't know this podcast existed. I just discovered it recently and I love it. I find topics that are important to me. The shows are informative and entertaining. Wonderful information. Vinny F. Awesome. So I want to explain to people what hyperbaric oxygen is and why it actually is stimulating the healing process. So it's under pressure, correct? Explain to them what it means.
So hyperbaric oxygen, you go into a chamber, and generally people don't feel claustrophobic because it's not really close to your body. Think of it almost like you're in this big balloon.
Right.
You go inside a chamber where they blow it up, put you under pressure.
Almost like diving.
And often increase the amount of oxygen in the air. Not always, but often.
So there's soft chambers and hard chambers. If you go in the soft chamber, you can take your computer, your phone, whatever. If you go in a hard chamber, you can't. You take a book.
Well, it depends on the chamber, but soft chambers can go up to 1.3 atmospheres of pressure. So basically, it's the level of pressure as if you were 10 feet
Underwater. Okay.
Right?
So it's like you're diving.
For people who have more significant problems, that doctors often recommend higher levels of pressure, 1.5. I talked about the head trauma study we did on soldiers, and we did that at 1.5 atmospheres. So you need a hard chamber. You can't do that with soft chambers. And sometimes to really enhance stem cell production and healing of broken bones and things like that, they'll go up to 2 atmospheres of pressure. And for most of my patients, they use soft chambers. And the reason they do is they can rent them and have them at home, since for all 8 of our clinics, half of our patients come from out of state or far away, and their local communities may not have hard chambers. I mean, you clearly Google HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and find places in your community that have it.
So by being under pressure, it's forcing the oxygen into your blood. That's the theory, is it's forcing it into your blood. So you're forcing more oxygen into your blood, which is now stimulating stem cells. It's stimulating what else?
Something called angiogenesis, which is your body actually producing more blood vessels.
Okay.
And so
Doesn't it also
I'm going to read
stimulate
this
growth hormone?
from hyperbaricmedicinecenter.com. Breathing, oxygen under pressure causes oxygen to diffuse into blood plasma. This oxygen-rich plasma is able to travel past the restriction, and gets up to 4 times further into the tissue. And that helps with blood vessel regeneration, stem cell production, some evidence it can also decrease inflammation and promote healing overall. one of my favorite stories is Grace. You remember Grace, who basically had a mitochondrial deficiency and was in the hospital for 3 years. And when her insurance ran out after they spent like $10 million in the hospital,
This was in the UK, right?
No, this was here in the United States. This was here in the US. They were basically going to send her home to die. And the mom was like not having any of it and took her to a hyperbaric chamber in Florida, had a SPECT scan, which showed overall very low blood flow to her brain. And on very low pressure, actually 1.1 atmospheres, she began to see better for the first time. She's like 3.5 years old. And she's had many treatments and just graduated from high school.
She went to prom.
She went to prom. Yeah. No, it's just a stunning
But she was
story.
pretty disabled.
She was very
disabled.
And I have a whole list of scans of people before and after they've had a stroke, before and after they've had a head injury, before and after they had toxic exposure. And it can just make a really significant positive difference. I have on my computer under research for hyperbaric oxygen, they've used it to enhance memory with people who have Alzheimer's disease. It's been used in autism, and there's published studies on that. Carbon monoxide, poisoning, fibromyalgia, head trauma. There are a number of head trauma studies, mold exposure, Lyme disease. Just, I think of it for anything that decreases blood flow or activity to the brain. It can be a potential treatment. And it's not without any side effects. Sometimes if you go under the higher pressures, you get that increased pressure in your ear.
Yeah.
And that's a possibility. Sometimes it'll change your eyeglass prescription. But by and large, of the hundreds, maybe more, patients we've referred, side effects aren't the issue. It's compliance. It's getting able to do it consistently on a regular basis.
Decreasing inflammation and like I said, we use it in the hospital for infections and things like that. Improving healing. Yeah.
So just an option, learn more about it. You can learn more about it actually in Memory Rescue, my book, Memory Rescue, or Feel Better Fast and Make It Last. I talk about the healing powers of hyperbaric oxygen. You can also call our call center at Amen Clinics. Go to amenclinics.com and learn more about hyperbaric oxygen in where we have our 8 clinics. So if there's anything you learned today, please post it on any of your social media sites and hashtag Brain Warriors Way Podcast. Leave a review or questions for us at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. We'll enter you into a raffle to win one of Tana's cookbooks, the Brain Warriors Way cookbook. Stay with us. Welcome back. In this podcast, we're going to do Brain in the News and look at what's in the news related to brain function. But before we do, I want to read a review. I recently came across your work on YouTube, and I've absolutely enjoyed your talks and interviews. I've ordered your new book this week. Thank you so much. I admire your mission. I've made several health changes recently, and I am feeling great. I've known for years the right way to eat and take care of myself. It wasn't until I saw the brain scans that it became real to me what I've been doing to myself. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and keep it up, please. Well, from Joe. Thank you, Joe, so much. All right. So in Brain in the News, we look at what are the news articles that we think are important that you should know about in the news this week. And Tana, you have one.
I do. So we've we've known that tap water is not great for a long time. Like we all have, not all of us, but most of us have reverse osmosis systems. We've got a water softener. But did you know it could cause cancer? So new study. Let's see. It says, can you get cancer from tap water? New study says even safe drinking water poses a risk. So according to a new study from the Environmental Working Group, this was in USA Today, report came out that says watchdog group cautions that carcinogenic products in tap water may altogether increase cancer risk for thousands of U.S. residents over a lifetime. They found 22 carcinogens commonly found in tap water, including arsenic, byproducts of water disinfectants, radionuclides such as uranium, radium, and they could cumulatively result in over 100,000 cancer cases over the span of a lifetime. Although most tap water meets legal standards set by the federal government, EWG researchers found that contaminants present in tap water create a measurable risk for cancer. Is that crazy?
That means drink clean water.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to have a really good system.
And all plastic bottles are not the same. And many of
plastic
them
in general
are
is
not safe for you. So you want to make sure you understand the vehicles that you're drinking water out of.
So it says, even though the vast majority of community water systems meet legal standards, yet the latest research shows that contaminants present in the water at those concentrations, perfectly legal, can still harm human health. EPA plans to regulate cancer-causing chemicals found in America's drinking water. An earlier study found that a cumulative analysis of contaminants in California tap water found a heightened risk of cancer for 15,000. Let's see. Yeah, this has like been, a debate going on for decades. So tap water is not as safe as you think. The study funded by the Park Foundation compiled a list of 22 contaminants, which is what we already said, in 48,363 community water systems they tested.
Wow.
That's just crazy.
I mean, this is like a really extensive study.
And estimates it serves about 86% of the U.S. population. So this wasn't small.
So it's
crazy.
It's an evil ruler strategy.
So you want to be paying attention.
So another study, another article out this week, suicide among troops spiked in 2018 to the highest rate in 5 years, according to the Pentagon. So the suicide rate among military troops, it's just heartbreaking.
It's terrible.
Active duty troops was 24.8 per 100,000 in 2018. 5 years ago was 18.5 per 100,000 service members. They've seen it across all the different services. And, part of it is related to the chronic stress. It's also related to the loneliness of, leaving your family. I was in the Army for 10 years. So part of it is the terrible food. Mm-hmm. And really the lack of brain health education. Now, what the Army will do, or the government will do, is they'll increase mental health services as they have been typically done in the military. But I remember after Sandy Hook happened and President Obama said we need more money for mental health. Yet all of the school shooters had seen mental health professionals. Right. We don't need more money for more psychiatric drugs. What we need is a revolution in brain health. Otherwise, this disturbing trend is going to continue.
I feel like we're letting them down.
We are letting our society down by not getting serious about brain health. I mean, just, the water you drink, the milk,
the stuff we put on our bodies,
the toxins you put on your body, all of this matters.
Yeah.
Here, why don't you do this one?
RCT supports efficacy of St. John's wort for post-menopausal symptoms of depression.
I wanted you to read that. RCT stands for randomized controlled trial.
Why did you want me to read that? I'm not in menopause, supposedly.
I know, but you're 51 this year, and I'm just protecting myself.
You're just upset because I have the house at sub-zero temperatures.
Oh my God, I'm wearing like the winter robe
I even
around
went
the
and got
house.
checked for menopause to see if I was in menopause, but they say I'm not. So
Read
I
the
don't know.
study.
Supplements of St. John's wort may help reduce the incidence of hot flashes and help depression in postmenopausal women, says a new study. According to the recent report from the American Botanical Council, sales of St. John's wort were at 5.77 million in U.S. mainstream multi-outlet channel in 2018. St. John's wort is most commonly used for depression, but there's a strong scientific evidence that it's effective for mild to moderate depression. The new study published in the Complementary Therapies in Medicine indicated that the herb may also be good for menopausal symptoms in addition to further supporting the potential for antidepressive activity. So interesting, because there are also other herbs that they say really help.
So, but it's the first time I've read that St. John's wort is actually helpful for hot flashes and menopausal symptoms.
Because I know black cohosh is supposed to be in certain, like there's a few.
So when I first started doing scans in 1991 and realized some of the meds I was taught to prescribe were just toxic for brain function, I started studying supplements. And one of my favorite ones over the years was St. John's wort. Now, BrainMD actually doesn't carry St. John's wort because there's problems with it, that it can decrease the effectiveness of birth control pills.
Right.
It can decrease the effectiveness of antiviral medication. So we chose not to include it in our line, but I still use it. I still like it for people who are worriers, people who hold on to negative thoughts, people who struggle with depression, but they don't want to take an antidepressant. And head to head against St. John's wort and Zoloft, they're equally effective.
Interesting.
And so there are dramatically fewer side effects with St. John's wort versus most SSRIs. For me, I really like 5-HTP and saffron. That's what we have in our serotonin mood support. But St. John's wort is an option for people, especially if they're struggling with hot flashes. But say, for example, they have breast cancer and they can't take estrogen.
Well, and that's why since you put this in my hands, I didn't know what you were putting in my hands. Things like, I've not tried them, but I do know from some of my classes, supposedly things like Dong Quai and black cohosh, and there's a few things like that that supposedly also help with.
But see, what I like about this, it's a randomized controlled trial.
Yeah.
That's what you want. All right. One more. And this one is going to blow your mind. Our skulls are out evolving us.
Crazy.
Scientists argue that our ever shrinking skulls are wreaking havoc on our well-being.
Wow.
And they talk about a case of a mother whose child was just struggling with sleep and breathing problems, and the normal, cheerful baby had transformed into withdrawn, ornery, uncooperative 5-year-old. And the mom knew there was something the matter and took mica all over the place, and nothing was working. But they found a doctor who said the problem was actually the bones in Micah's face. And science suggests that crooked teeth, overbites, narrow jaws, crimped nasal airway passages are a modern phenomenon, that skeletal remains show that just 300 years ago, humans commonly displayed straight, perfectly aligned teeth, wide jaws, flat palates, and a large nasal passages that signal habitual, healthy breathing.
Wow.
But more recently, our faces have begun to deform. Today, our skulls are marked by high, narrow palates, shorter, lower jaws, and often insufficient space, When children drop their baby teeth, there's typically inadequate room for their adult teeth, which leads to crowding and misalignment. Worst of all, this anatomy encourages mouth breathing, which can lead to under-the-radar sleep difficulties and a whole array of problems ranging from behavioral challenges, anxiety, depression, to cognitive issues. And these conditions cost thousands of dollars to correct through orthodontics, dentistry, therapy, and even surgery to remove tonsils and adenoids. If you Google, if you want to learn more about this, our skulls are out evolving us.
Crazy.
It is so interesting, so fascinating that, I mean, you know, your brain is in a closed space. And if that space is closing in on you, that might be one of the
So
causes of mental health challenges that nobody knows about. All right, we're out of time for Brain in the News. We hope you like our new segment. If there's something you learned, please post it on any of your social media sites and hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast. Also, leave a review, leave your questions. We're going to answer them next on brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We've been talking about hyperbaric oxygen this week, and now we're going to read your questions. We love when you leave questions and also reviews. So speaking of reviews, I'm going to read one right now from Belina K. If only the brain scan was a requirement for everyone, like the flu shot or multiple vitamin. Oh, how happy this world would be.
Thank you so
funny.
much. I'm actually not a fan of flu shots.
I'm not either, but multiple vitamins we're good with, so.
Yeah, I want you to keep your immune system as healthy as it can be. Now we'll probably get hate mail.
I know,
about the flu shot.
let me take that back. If you are someone like your mother who can't afford to get sick, is very fragile, then I would probably consider it, but not for the average person.
So we're doing questions today. And if there's one thing you learn, write it down, post it. We want to get the Brain Warriors Way to as many people as we can. It's been growing, which makes us thrilled. Here's a question from Sheila V. I have two ApoE4s. So the apolipoprotein E gene, there are a couple of different types of it. There's the E2, E3, and E4. Mm-hmm. E4, if you have one of them, increases your risk of late onset Alzheimer's disease by about 5%. Two copies actually increase it about 25%.
Ouch. But isn't it still affected more by the choices you make?
Well, let's read the question. I'm 62 years old. Is it too late to change my chances of Alzheimer's? Mm-hmm. I've already went gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free.
Awesome.
I eat more primal, except no dairy and honey.
Awesome.
I lean toward a keto diet. I exercise at least 3 to 4 times a week. I do weights, biking, and yoga. I feel I've found out too late. Thank you. Sheila V.
Well, I love what she's doing.
And I absolutely don't believe it's too late.
Right.
I think as soon as you know that you want to become a brain warrior, you want to be armed, prepared, and aware, because you are clearly in the fight of your life. So having double E4s, the apolipoprotein, and you can get it, you know, your doctor can order it. 23andMe, I think, will tell you about it.
But isn't it also, what I would want to know is, like, what are your symptoms? Like, if you don't have any symptoms yet, like, can't she halt the progression from where she's at by her lifestyle?
And people who have 2 of the E4 genes, they have a 25% chance of getting it.
Right.
But that means they have a 75%
Right,
chance they'll not get it.
And a big part of it's based on her
if I
lifestyle.
was Sheila, if I was you, I would get scanned, see where your brain is at. Lisa Gibbons, who's a friend of mine, her mother and her grandmother died with Alzheimer's disease. And when she came to see me when she was 51, as she was going through a divorce, her brain was clearly not healthy. I mean, it was headed to the dark place. But she just did everything I asked her to do. Many of the things, Sheila, you're already doing.
Right.
And 11 years later, her brain was better. So if I was you, I'd look, I'd come to one of our clinics or somewhere where they do SPECT scans or PET scans. I'd look at the blood flow and activity in your brain. If it's really low, I just ramp it up and be even more serious with the supplements, hyperbaric oxygen, all the things we talk about. You certainly should get my book, Memory Rescue. You should know, okay, what are my risk factors? We talk about the Bright Minds risk factors a lot on the podcast. And you say you have the G, which is G is for genetics, but you want to know all the other risk factors you have and be serious as soon as possible. You're already serious. We're very proud of you. And I believe for you, especially, it is not too late to really push this thing off for as long as possible.
So the next one, did I hear you say some people with a sleepy brain should not drink coffee? Heather L. So let's talk about coffee.
We have this discussion.
We have this discussion. So when I met you, I was drinking 2 pots a day. But I love coffee. I love the taste of coffee. I love the idea of coffee. But I don't want to drink too much caffeine.
But it does not love you back.
So what we do is we brew it actually less than half calf. It's more like third or quarter calf. And then we use half almond milk. So by the time we actually have the coffee, it's like less than a quarter calf. So it's like very little of it is actually caffeinated coffee. And so that way I get the idea of the coffee. It's more of a latte and it's, and you can even do it decaf. But yeah, so I like the idea of it, but just try to get less caffeine or no caffeine or go to green tea.
So I have a patient recently who I convinced to go off caffeine, and it was a hard week for her. And I think she swore at me more than normal. But she's so much better off of it. Everybody I've gotten off caffeine likes me more, not for the first week or two, but later, because caffeine, the reason I don't like it is it constricts blood flow to the brain. It's addictive. That's why they have trouble going off of it. It increases your stress hormone. It decreases something called adenosine that tells you to go to sleep. And I'm just not a fan. I think the more you can do it with clean water, not tap water, as we found out, the better for you. So, yes, decaf coffee has a lot of antioxidants in it. And so decaf organic coffee may be better. There's another question. I'm curious what an anemic brain looks like and the problems it causes in a person's thoughts and decision making. I love that question because SPECT is a study of blood flow and activity. So I scanned one of my friends from medical school and her brain just looked terrible, like she was a drug addict. But I went to Oral Roberts University School of Medicine. We didn't have any drug addicts in our class. And if I didn't really know her, I'd be like sending her to the lab to get a drug test.
Right.
It turned out she had pernicious anemia, which is a B12 deficiency. And whenever you're anemic, you are getting less oxygen. So we talked about oxygen this week, where you're getting less oxygen to your brain and you don't make good decisions. Your anxiety level goes up. You're tired. You need healthy blood flow in order to think right.
Right. So several people I know, including myself, have had ferritin deficiencies. And when they are able to replace it with ferritin, which is a form of iron, it's like Lazarus effect.
So everybody who is having cognitive issues or emotional issues should get your iron level checked.
It's one of the things we mention in Brain Warriors Way and Omni Diet and your books in our assessment.
Like all the time.
Right, in our assessment.
Right. You should get your ferritin. It's a measure of iron storage checked. And if it's low, you should either eat more foods with iron in them, like spinach. But if it's high, so yours tends to run low, as many women do, especially if they have heavy periods because they lose blood. But if it's high, it promotes heart disease and aging. And mine's always been high. So I generally donate blood every year to keep my iron levels healthy.
Here's the tricky part. A lot of women think that when they go through menopause or when they have a hysterectomy, they no longer need to supplement with ferritin. Turns out not to always be true. So so
you just need to check.
You need to get it checked. Right.
You need to check your blood. All right.
Don't assume that.
One more. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. I'm currently taking all of the type 8 targeted supplements and Brain and Body Power and the Pro Brain Biotic. My question is, I went to see a nurse practitioner who put me on Abilify. What I want to know is if Brain Type 8 would do better with just the supplements with Abilify or the way I've been doing it, which is all supplements, because he said for me to take Abilify at night. So here's my thought on supplements versus medicine. If you can do it with the supplements and you feel awesome, great. But if you really do the supplements in a targeted way and you need more help, then medication becomes an option. Now, seeing a nurse practitioner, here's my thought on Abilify. Abilify, like Risperdal, like Zyprexa, like Seroquel, they're antipsychotic medications, and they have a boatload of side effects. And if you're psychotic, I'm like a huge fan. I'll prescribe them for you because being psychotic has all sorts of side effects. But willy-nilly, it's the wrong word, but prescribing antipsychotics to people who are not psychotic just doesn't make sense to me. It is clearly not the first thing I would think is rational.
We don't know if this person is psychotic or not.
I don't know.
Right.
She didn't tell us. Brain Type 8 is, so those of you who haven't taken your brain type test, go to brainhealthassessment.com. And it's a self-report test. So, take it with a grain of salt and talk to a medical professional about it. But 8 generally means there's issues with anxiety and sadness and worry and focus problems. And so the supplements we recommend go to support those issues in the brain. We always think you should talk to a healthcare professional, but one who knows about supplements, so it won't just diminish them. That's why at Amen Clinics, we actually have 2 naturopaths working with us because they know about medicine, but they also know about supplements.
And I would hope and sort of assume, and I shouldn't assume, but hope that the nurse practitioner you're seeing who's putting you on the Abilify is at least a mental health or psychiatric nurse practitioner.
All right. So is there something you learned? Please post it on any of your social media sites, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast. Leave your questions like these, great questions, on brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Also leave us a review. Thanks so much.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.